let's just start from the beginning. I'll be able to explain this if I actually just explain the story of how this happened. So a week ago, Scott messaged me and he was like, hey man, I know this is kind of last minute, but would you be interested in making like a song for like an anime fight scene that I'm working on for my next video? I was like, duh, yes. And so I was like, yeah, absolutely. And he told me about like what it was. He showed me the animation without any music. Obviously there was no music. He showed me the animation just with the dialogue. And he was like, you know, after I saw that, I was like, it was pretty clear. Okay, Scott doesn't really know much about anime. So not because of the animation, but because of what he says in it. And then also what he prefaced it with. He was like, listen, I'm not much into anime, but I know you probably are going to know musically maybe how to approach this. And so he asks, okay, so what I said was, he gave me all that. I was like, okay, so I know you're not super into anime. Let me give you some super generic examples of like super anime kind of music. Tell me which one you like the most. Let's see, what examples did I give him? I gave him Sword Art Online. I gave him One Punch Man. There's one, oh, Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon being the very, very kind of corny, pretty music. Granted, all anime music I think is kind of pretty, but there was that. There was the Sword Art Online being a little bit more rock oriented, and then of course One Punch Man with the super EDM-ish kind of sound. He was like, I don't care which one you go with, but I'm feeling the more rock-ish, the J-rock sound. I was like, okay, so we'll go with like a Sword Art Online vibe. So that's what I went with. That was pretty much my reference point. I was still pretty much, I didn't really like reference anything. I know quite a bit about just Japanese composition overall, I think. So anyway, basically, I told him, I was like, okay, that's great. The rock thing's great. I've got a guy who's great for this. Who's great at the guitar, like the super like anime, like Japanese kind of guitar performances, named Joshua. Joshua is he's done his research. The guy knows what he's doing, and he knows exactly how to approach music in a Japanese way when it comes to, well, really, like composition or guitar playing. The dude does a perfect Crush 40, a perfect Jun Senoi performance. He's got Jun Senoi down. Senoi, I say Senoi, it's Senoi, down to a T, man. That guy has got all the T's crossed and all the I's dotted with Jun. So he's also, for anybody's if anybody doesn't know, he also did quite a bit of shredding on some other tracks of mine. He did the guitar solo on Jump Up Superstar. Not only very good at the Japanese stuff, but he's also very good at the 80s-ish stuff. So there's that, and then yes, Switch. So I asked him, I was like, hey man, tight schedule, tight deadline here, but could you get me some guitars for a track, for like a super anime kind of track? And he's like, absolutely, by the end of the week I could. I was like, great, I'm gonna have a composition done soon. I'll send you the layout, you can work with the rest. If you'll see here, this is my piece, there's nothing at the front. Whereas when you watch it, you will definitely notice there's some like ambient stuff and some cool orchestral stuff going on in the front. So that was all Nick. Nick did all of that. Also, Nick, he pretty much did a whole entire composition. Turns out it didn't really transition well into my track, so we talked it over. He used kind of the same elements that he did originally from his original composition, but he worked it in so that it would move into my part of the piece much better. Beyond that, and I talked about this earlier, but actually without me even asking, I knew there was something I wanted to do, but I didn't know. In the soft piano part, there was no strings. And he comes in with this super anime string thing, and I love it. It's so good. It's my favorite part of the track. It's actually not in this version. It's a long story, but essentially the strings are not in this project. But that's one of my favorite parts of the entire song, was that. was just the freaking string thing. Anyway, so without Nick's work, this is completely without Nick's work. Actually, well, what? Oh, well, that's weird. Why is it every single time I play, I do something? It's not supposed to sound like that at all, and you guys probably know that. Granted, you haven't really heard it, so let me actually play. Well, everything else is correct, so why is this weird? Let me try. Here, let me try resetting the patch. Most everything I did was patches. Okay, there it is, but I have to. So here, I'll actually recreate this sound for you. So basically, there's an ARP. A big thing with Japanese music is the arpeggiations, and like the super high energy, like rhythm sounds and stuff. Everything is very high energy with Japanese stuff. I mean, not everything, but that's a very popular theme with them. There you go. Okay, so this is actually just Alchemy. Alchemy's fantastic, for the record. I don't really think I had the delay up at all. The delay, I think, was maybe entirely out. And I think the verb was a little bit lower in the mix. And that's pretty much it. So basically what this is right here is an ARP. Arpeggiator, which pretty much means automatically if I play a chord, it will create a rhythm. It'll take those notes and create a rhythm to it. So I'm currently playing, look at this. Well, you can't look at it, but C, D, F, G, just for the heck of it. And now it's playing. If I did that without that on, none of that would go. So it's an automated, it's really cool. So I essentially did that. That's all that is. Got that panned over. That's a little bit further back in the mix. Let me show you guys. You know what? Just so that we don't get any audio bleed, I am going to play this. And let me know if audio is okay. I'm going to play this through the cans. So, just to show you guys all the synth stuff. In fact, maybe, well, nah. There's that. There is your typical pad kind of saw. All right, peace out, Gray. And what that is, that pumping sound, that is kickstart, which is it's very popular. The classic thing would have been to have a kick, even if it's off or like turned all the way down, and have you sidechain like a compressor, sidechain it to the kick on this synth, so that whenever the kick hits, it pulls back. However, we don't really need that anymore because now we have plugins that do that job for you, and maybe even better, where they essentially just pull back automatically the volume, but you know, without needing any of that side chaining stuff. What's up, Waffles? And the other funny thing, this is just a factory synth patch in EXS24. For anybody getting into, not getting into, well, maybe getting into, but anybody that, you know, knows anything about Logic or just music production, EXS24 is built into Logic. It's built into Logic. So you don't even need, get Logic and you've already got this. Now, it's a bit of a thin sound. It doesn't have a lot of thickness to it, but for Japanesey kind of stuff, I kind of like where everything's brighter. So that's part of the reason I picked it, because it was a simple, easy patch to get to. And it you know, like this kind of stuff works great. In fact, most of what you hear in here is actually EXS24 synth patches. Composerily, I'll look into it. So this is Alchemy, but yet again, just another built-in Logic patch. I've got Kickstart on, which Kickstart is very, very cheap. Kickstart is maybe $20, might even be $15. Very cheap. And it just gives it a little bit of movement. I another one with kickstart on it, and it's just got it's another AXS24 pad. You know, I've got the release up a little bit. It's just a pad, and I'm essentially treating it like almost like a bell of sorts. Yeah. So that's pretty much most of the synths. There's a little bit that once we get into, I guess, the section C here, you've got this thing in the right ear, which has got, and I'm doing this with quite a bit of it, but what it's got is a single EQ, which essentially is just my filter, and you'll see here with my frequency, it's moving up. So right now it's really dull, but it's rising. You get that? And that's another one of those ARPs. This is a popular one to do that. That rhythm is very popular. Right, so I've got that more in the right ear. I've got my main pad. Synth bell. Super soft. Which is, you know, these are both my melodies right here. And then I have it go back down in the filter. And then what I have it do is once it gets over here, I have it pan over to the left ear. You hear that? If you're on headphones, you'll notice this stuff. And then back over to the right ear. It's just fun. It's fun a little bit. You know, I probably could have set a tremolo for that, but I wanted to have full control of how it moves between both ears. Well, here, let me go ahead and show you. You guys obviously know there's piano in here. It's very obvious. Piano is a very popular instrument to use in anime as well. Excuse me, and especially this way, which is to do high octaves. You know? That whole thing. And then just play it one octave up. It's like that high kind of chimey pretty sound. Very, very, it's pretty popular with the Japanese music to do that. So this is Keyscape. Unlike most of the stuff I've showed so far, this is not part of Logic, and it's incredibly expensive. I think it's like $500. Might be $300. I don't know. Regardless, it's up in the multi-hundreds. So this is not cheap. However, very worth. If you have the money for this and you want good, especially good, like the piano sounds in here are very good, but I would say what really makes Keyscape for me is the electric pianos and the clavinets and all the unique key-based instruments in here. The emulations of old like 80s to 90s sounds as well are fantastic, which you'll find in the vintage digital keys right here. Anyway, all of that aside, the one other thing is, here, I'll go ahead and turn this off so you get an idea of what it sounds like without this on. So if anybody, it might come off subtle to anybody who's not, you know, like listening hard for this kind of stuff. And again, you're going to probably notice this a little bit more in cans, but this is my SSL EQ and compressor. Basically with this off, this is what this sounds like. It sounds fine. However, I want a little bit more brightness in it, right? And I also want it to like have a bit more of a punch, a bit more of a bite. You know, I want that front end to really hit. So I've also got the compressor going, so it's essentially taking the transient and immediately pulling it back right after the first like little bit. So you get a lot more of the bite from the beginning. So here's without it on, or here's without it on again. On. Off. On. It just adds a little bit. That's very popular, I think. I think I turned on a little bit of reverb in the soft piano part. Yeah, you can see right here. A little bit of reverb. You get a little bit of space. Anyway, so The reverb only kind of shows up there though at the beginning, or at the soft piano part, and then disappears again. Also the piano, the high part with the bell and already sounded pretty anime. And that's another popular thing with a lot of anime music, a lot of Japanese stuff, is those pushes. You hear how there's those like kind of staccato pushes? Da, 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 boom. That's a very popular thing to do. Okay, so then there's my bass. This is the Scarby. This thing is pretty cheap, honestly. If you get the free version of Contact, and then you get Scarby pre-bass. I think Scarby pre-bass costs like 30, maybe $50 tops, I think. Pretty cheap for all things considered, because it's a great sounding bass. Really, really, really great emulation. By the way, if you guys hear any weird popping, it's just because my CPU is having a freak out. It's a pretty convincing bass if you know how to program it right. However, there's some other stuff going on here to help it really stand out. So this is without any of the effects on. And this is with all the effects on. Okay, so I'm calling them effects. Essentially what I'm doing is the pre-bass is just that. They've set it up so it's just a sample of just the bass without it going into anything, right? It's just a clean bass sample. So I've got Logic's bass amp. Again, comes with Logic. So you get Logic, you get this. Honestly, a great emulation. Gives you a lot of options. It's just bass amp emulation. I pretty much just set it up. Every song is different. I use the pre-bass quite a bit, and I almost always have a completely different setting for the amp, so the tone is different. I just pretty much fiddled around until I found the tone I liked for this song. And then the next thing is, again, built into Logic. All of this is in Logic. Logic's console EQ, which is an emulation of the Neve 1073. The way, now this gets into a little bit more specific nerdy stuff, but the way that the console EQ works is it's essentially, like I said, it's an emulation of the Neve 73, and the way that it colors like the bass or kick, like a bass drum, is something I really like on a lot of stuff. I almost always use this console EQ on bass. Every once in a while there's exceptions, but almost always I use the Neve. Or it's called the console EQ, but I call it the Neve. Hold on, you asked the question. Was it more or less stressful making a song that has to go over an animation? On one hand, I would think it's harder making music that has to clash with the animation, since you can't just... Yeah, no, you know what? In this case, it was actually pretty easy. This kind of music, trying to work with it, honestly, it was pretty easy. And that's the other thing, is actually, even after I composed to it, there were some changes made to the pacing, just minor changes, but because of that, we had to edit things a little bit afterward. So this is the complete original uncut version, which you also will hear on SoundCloud. But in this case, it was actually pretty easy. I felt like I could feel it out pretty well, and it wasn't too tough. There are points where I've done this kind of work before where it does get a little tough. Stressful might not be the right word though. Frustrating might be a better word. Or just challenging. But sometimes that challenge is nice. I enjoy it. This is some of the most fun I've had working on a track in a while, honestly. I had a lot of fun doing this one. You have SoundCloud? Yeah, man. Links in my in the about section of this this channel. You can go to the info tab if you're on mobile, and it's right there. I've had a SoundCloud for a very long time. Anyway, so that's pretty much the bass. I've also got a compressor going on it. I've noted this many times. I really like the way the Opto sounds, vintage Opto, which is essentially an emulation of the LA2A. Classic compressor. And it's not doing much. I usually like to keep the meter pretty low, but I like the way it colors it. And it's kind of a softer compressor. But again, I really like the way the way the emulation colors the bass. So yeah. So there's the bass, you know, and then I've got the kick and the snare. You know, here, while we're on the bass though, let me just go ahead and show you a little bit more. See, it sounds pretty dang good. Changing the buffer size, I think, did help with the CPU, which is good. Okay, so then we've got here, let me just show you guys all the drums together. So, this is all, again, Logic. I'm getting away with a lot of Logic here. A lot of Logic Pro. It sounds funny when you say it that way. This is all Drum Kit Designer. This is the SoCal patch. However, I did make adjustments in post. So I like to have all my drum kit entirely, every track separate. So I have total control the same way I would with a real kit, you know? So with the kick, here's a big thing. You're gonna see this, and it's probably hard for you to see this because it's such small text. But even if I play it and I quantize it some, I never have it at 100, because if it's at 100, it's gonna sound too tight and it's gonna sound robotic. And yes, we want it to sound tight, but I also want it to sound at least a little human. So it's not perfect. So that's important with pretty much everything. Everything I play, except for the synth stuff, none of it is perfectly 100% quantized. I have it where it might be close sometimes, or I don't even quantize it all. But one way or another, I try to keep it where there's a little bit of human element in it, where it's not quite totally perfect. Anyway, like I said, I love the way the console EQ sounds on kick and bass, so I've got that running on here, turning up a little bit of the 93 hertz area for the kick. I like to, in order to have, with most mixes, I have the bass at boosting a lower frequency of the bass than the kick. The kick I usually have up around the 80 to 100 hertz range, whereas the bass I usually have down around the 50 to 60. Because it gives the bass its low end space and also gives the kick its low end space. Right, so this, just because I have the EQ with the kick taking up a space that's a little bit more above the bass, it helps them both have their space without fighting each other, right? Getting all muddled and gross. The other thing is I like to turn up, you'll notice quite a bit here, around the 3.2, maybe to 4.8K range, like the mid-high range for the kick, because there's a little frequency that you hear with the kick that is really, it helps it pop out, you know, so it's got a little bit more punch. What's up, DJ? So this is without that EQ. If you're on headphones, you'll hear this. This is without the EQ on. And with it on. Right. It's both coloring it and then giving it, because I'm giving it some boost in these areas, it's really helping. I actually also have it low cut at 50 hertz, so it's not even it's hardly fighting with the bass because the bass is taking up most of that space. Just helps out. Okay, and then next in line is the snare. I don't generally like the Neve on the snare, the console EQ. However, I really like the SSL on the snare. So I've got, here's the SSL. Actually here, before I get to this, I'm so sorry. There's also a compressor on this kick. I like the FET a lot. I believe this one is an emulation of the DBX. It's the DBX 180. Have my attack pretty quick, but a little bit slower than normal, so that you really get the front end of the transient before it pulls it back, right? The release time's a little bit slower. See, you're seeing that it's doing a little bit to the level here. It's pulling it back, but not too much. I don't like a lot of compression. Right. Is there anything I'm actually doing to the kick? So I have it set on SoCal. There's numerous different options here, right? I've got it dampened quite a bit, so you're not really getting a lot of the ring from the kick, I guess. Gains up quite a bit. Anyway, so there's your kick. The snare. Also, SoCal, this is the third one. This is this guy. Again, dampening it just a little bit, so some of the ringing isn't as much there. I do like the ring, but it was just a little too long for me. You know, I just make those adjustments as I go, just trying to listen to what's going to make the most sense. Right, okay, so here I've got, this is my EQ. I know you probably can't tell what's going on here, but let me try and explain this to me. Or to me. To you guys. Here, this is the filters area right here. Basically, this one means that whenever I turn it up, it'll take out low end. If I turn this one up, it'll take out high end. Does that make sense? So let me just show you what that means. You hear that? If you're on headphones, you'll definitely. Right? If I turn this up, you get less of the low end. So it sounds very, you know, high end, like it's almost on a radio or something. So I kept it about halfway. I didn't want like the really low end stuff, but I obviously didn't want to take out all of it. I needed that meat. I rarely use this guy, but this one takes out the high end. See, that sounds like it's under a blanket, right? Sometimes that's useful, but in this case, maybe not so much. Anyway, so that's what the filter does. This is your high frequency area. This turns up the really high frequencies. This is your high mid frequency is what they say. This is low mid frequency right here, and then this is low frequency. Okay, so I'm turning up a little bit around, what is this, the 7,000 range, 7,000 hertz. There's this bell button that just pretty much means, if I were to explain this, this is a shelf, right? This is what they call a shelf when it's turned up like this. This is a bell, right? Because it's shaped like a bell. Which, it's just got a little bit of a different sound to it. I won't get too much into that because I'm sure you guys don't really care that much. But pretty much I'm turning that up a little bit. I'm giving it that bell, so it's got a bit more of a biting tone, I think. Not really touching high mid frequencies here. Turning up a little bit of low mid frequencies, so you're getting that ring and that meat from the snare. That's about it. I don't even have the compressor going for this guy. This is without the SSL on, though, just so you guys know what it sounds like without it. So here's without it. On. Off. On. Okay, so there you go. Compressor, once again, useful for drums, but I do keep it pretty light so that it's not, you know, I don't like things being super compressed. I'm not a fan of that. I used to compress the living snot out of stuff, and I'm not a fan of those mixes anymore. Right, it's doing very little here, but it's still doing something. This is without it on. On. Giving it just a little bit more of a pop, a little bit more of a bite at the beginning, right? Okay, and then my channel EQ is just doing a little bit more to bring up this is the brightness. Right, this is without it on. This is with it on. Baby Driver is just a cinematic adaptation of Baby Park from Double Dash. I'm interested. Now I want to watch it. You've piqued my interest. Okay, and then I've also obviously also got the toms. Again, using SSL, bringing up more of the low end with this stuff. A little bit of the high end so that you get it cutting through the mix. And then I've got a compressor on it. Also the vintage FET. Again, still not really going past like -3 decibels though. It's not going very far. It's not pulling the volume much. And then I think this is just similar settings to another one, bringing up a little bit of the high end obviously for the hat. Same with the crash. No compressor on the crash though. I don't want that. Right. So that's that. I've also got, I'm sure you guys probably noticed, got a reverse cymbal. This is a classic transitional instrument. It's used a lot. I use it probably too much, but right, it's just a good build up. Right, it's just a good build up. That's all it is. And then I've got, and these are also from Logic. These are all from Logic. Choppy Blast Riser. It's just a preset in the loops library. Right, and that you can see it shows up numerous other times as well. Again, just a really good transitional element. This guy doesn't show up here, but otherwise. So you got your drums, bass, that's pretty much what I had before I sent it to Josh. That's pretty much what it sounded like, was this. It's already pretty full, but it doesn't have that rock element, right? So then Josh finally, he sends me his guitar stuff, which is right down here. The classic case scenario with rhythm is to have 2 parts, L and R. A lot of times people will do the same take twice in both ears. Josh likes to do a little bit of a different thing. He likes to have like almost like a lower inversion a lot of the time in like the left ear and a higher inversion or something like that in the right. Right. So right ear's doing a little bit something different. Again, console EQ. I just like the way this thing sounds on a lot of stuff. Honestly, it's just coloring it. I'm not doing like anything else here with it. A little bit, I'm cutting out some of the lowest frequencies. That's pretty much it though. Channel EQ's doing most of the work here. This is without it on. This is with it on. Give it a little bit more bite. A little bit more of the guitar sound. And then I got one more channel EQ going, I think just to pull back a little bit of a frequency I wasn't a fan of. That's all that's doing. Pretty much doing the exact same thing to the other one. Right, so that's pretty much all that rhythm guitar is. So then, guitars, drums, bass. And that's that. And this right here is the same patch as this. However, I slowed down the kickstart so the pump is slower. It's not like it's like right. So it's a little bit slower. And then the other thing is I've got that filter on it so that it goes, actually it's just a cutoff. It's just this cutoff. So it's just going down. It feels a little bit more like it's, any tempo changes? No. Nope. It stays 185 the entire time. I think Nick may have technically made his 184 just so that it would match some things going on the screen a little bit closer, but it's pretty much 185 the whole time. But and again, that's all Nick's part. For everything I did, it's 185. Like I said, the strings that he did are not in this folder. They're not in this part, but I can go to that file and show you guys the strings isolated. Is there a reason why you don't color your tracks, or do you just not feel like it? I'm just too lazy. I have ideas and I immediately need to just do things, and I don't have time to think about. I'm not thinking about trying to colorize stuff. That's too much work. It distracts me from just getting things done. It distracts me from being able to just, you know, if I'm in the mode, then it's just about, okay, doing this, doing that. Okay, now I got an idea. Now I got to do this. So it's just very quick, you know, just constantly moving forward, trying to get stuff done. So that's why I don't color the tracks. It's just because I don't think about it. I don't bother with it. It slows me down from getting things done. Okay, so yeah, again, there's this guy. Right, which is not, that one does not show up earlier. I think one of my favorite parts of this, other than that string thing that Nick did in the build-up, is as I was finishing the composition, I was like, I feel like I could still make this more interesting. So I have a little bit of a movement in here that may not be immediately recognizable. It's one of my favorite parts. Get a little jazzy. It's actually very common for like, part of the reason I did that is because like there's a lot of Japanese composers that like to just like shove in that, like they just like to like sneak in chords like that. So I had a little bit of fun there. I let Joshua know about it, so he also, you know, took note of it, did his own voicings over it. And as you can hear, there's a little bit of a delay that I've got on the harmony and lead. Got an SSL on him. He's a great player. You know, hardly have to mess with any of what he did. And then another thing, this was kind of, he sent this, I was like, listen, if there's anything that you think would be great ideas, go for it, because, you know, you really know this whole anime thing. So if there's anything that, like, Japanese guitarists or, like, just composers do, please, feel free to mess with it. So he said there's this one thing that he's learned from, I don't remember which guitarist, but he did a lot, and it was to kind of have, like, this shredding ish kind of sound, and he gave me numerous different takes to work with, but he said put it way back, put some tremolo on it so it's moving between both ears, and a lot of verb and delay. And so this is happening during that part where it's like there's like the drum fills and everything. And he just sits there. Almost a siren-y sound from the feedback. Yeah, and then I glitch it out there to work with this guy. Yeah, so there's your guitars. Really great stuff. Actually, and I'll show you guys this as well. Gonna have to kind of speed through it, but that's pretty much this track. I've obviously, like I said, I've got this same patch as earlier, but I put like this filter thing on it, which this is all coming from Step Effects. Really cool plugin, also built into Logic. Right, and then that's the end. So, yeah. And of course, Joshua also does this little shredding in this build up here. Pretty cool stuff. Big fan of you and Scott. Thanks, Random Individual. Appreciate it. What video was this featured in? Scott the Waz's latest episode. Go check it out. The one other thing I would note is that a very, very kind of in the, and I think I've noted this before. So we all know, right? We all know the classic, very, very popular chord progression in the Western world. Right, that's very, very popular. Almost equally as popular in Japan is this chord progression that has gained the name the Ribbon Road chord progression, which is essentially this was very popular in the Western world about 30 to 40 years ago. For instance, never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down, never gonna run around and desert you. You're welcome. I just rickrolled you in the middle of the stream as an educational bit. So that's very popular. If only I could talk, in Japan. Not to mention the chord progression works great over the Scott the Waz main theme, if you will, that always appears at the end of his videos, which is, of course, what's going on here, just slowed way down and in a different key. Right, works great with. So that's all that's this chord progression here. The one cool thing though about this chord progression versus like, which I've made note of in a video of mine, is that it's they use it, but then they'll actually move to different progressions and parts. So props to them for using a very overused chord progression, but then actually taking it places. If only we could learn how to do that again. Right, so that's all it is. Again, with the pushes, those are popular. Dump, bump, 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 that kind of thing. Very, very typical with Japanese progressions. Anyway, making my way down to yeah, it's kind of a little similar, especially when there's nothing else working with it. Okay, so that's pretty much this. I guess it's just an extra little thing. In order to really get that meat out of the last hit, I added a little bit of this sample of a thunder roll. Right. I've used that thing a lot, if I'm honest. Okay, so we're almost done. Gonna go ahead and real quick show you guys. I think it's this guy. Gonna go ahead and show you guys. What's up, Luigi? Just watch the video. Great composition. Sounds like an actual anime. Thanks, dude. So this is what Nick sent me. So then I just mixed my track and then threw it in here. So it's just the master track. And then he also had the string thing that he did not tell me that he was going to do. And it ended up being like my favorite part of the whole thing. So this is all of Nick's stuff. Except for the guitars. I sent this mix once the whole transition, we had gotten everything together. I sent it to Joshua and he was like, hold on, I've got an idea based on what Sword Art Online will do. So he was like, and then he sent me this crap. It's kind of further back in the mix, but it gives it kind of that rock grit. Now, I'm sure Nick would love to break down his stuff himself, but I'll do a general. He's got the Logic trailer effects. You know, I don't know exactly all that he did, except I know a lot of it is also built into Logic, you know? So, again, he's got this 808 drop sound. That's what you hear at the beginning. Drone texture, you know? Oh, here's his strings. I'll get to those in a second. He's got this flute that you can hear a little bit. Listen, man, we were going for ominous. Yeah. Obviously, you got your good old gong. Yeah, so then here's the strings. I think what he told me is I think he's using East, West, and Spitfire for strings. Just if you guys care and want to know. That's the lower strings, and then he's got the bass, which is also that pre-bass, same sample I used. Same deal. Then he's got his piano, not Keyscape. I'm pretty sure this is built into Logic, but I'm not sure. Yeah, that sounds like the Steinway sample, I think. Right, and then his melody, which is... So he's got this piano. Right, and then near the... over here, I just didn't even bother putting it in. It's great. It sounds so good, because then with the track, let me just show you now. There's the song. And now you know.